All right, so in this tutorial, I want to cover something that seems to be easy and simple, but it's got a couple of little glitches or hiccups, if you will, and it's a good thing to explore and understand. When you draw something like this, and it's a single uniform color for the filled part of the face, but the edges are not crisp, they are not just black to white. You see a transition there, right? How do I get that to transition on the inside? Because if I start with something like this and then use the fill tool like this here, and maybe I have a blue color or something a little bit different. Let's go greenish and fill. For one, it's not necessarily filling to the same saturation or darkness here, and that might be in your fill settings. So always keep an eye on that too. If you click the fill settings, fill mode is default. There are some of these that could contribute to a misbehavior or unexpected behavior. And then there's also the opacity. That's the one here. So let's make it fully opaque on the fill, right? And so when you do this, you can see that it filled it, but it didn't fill it all the way to that transition. I mean, just where it starts transitioning, that's where it's standing. And the thing is, you can give it a tolerance here. So you could give it a tolerance. That's the, I had the opacity here. Here's the tolerance. If you give it a fairly high tolerance, it will possibly go and find this thing here, right? And fill it in. But then it's not very clean here. It's a pixelated appearance. And we'd like to have that softness that we have on the outside also on the inside. So how do we do that? And other things that could happen, you might be in continuous mode. Rather than clicking like this here, if you go continuous, in continuous mode, it constantly checks if there's another one it could fill. So you could do that if you start with nothing like this here, and you click and drag and you keep going in, but then soon enough it has it just completely filled. So especially with high tolerance. Let's try with no tolerance at all and see what happens. There you go. So I'm gonna click and come in, and so as it finds, we need a little bit of tolerance, just maybe 1 or 2. There you go. So now it sees some things to fill, but before you know it, it's going to break into too far, and there's a few missed. So that's not a enjoyable option either. We need to find a better way to really keep the two worlds apart, but yet also together. The two worlds I'm talking about is that you have a drawn line that's black or some dark color or something. Let's go erase this, and you draw it with an airbrush that's like the airbrush 100. And so here's your drawn outline of that cartoon face, and you could have the eyes already, or maybe this, let's do the smiley already. The eyes might come in later, but the problem is, again, is the filling it with maybe not black, maybe let's go reddish or like orange, and not getting this whiteness here. And then we also have this whiteness here. I don't know why we have filled it on the outside. That's odd. Maybe it's the tolerance. And also the continuous mode. Let's just do standard. There. So how do we fix that? Well, one approach to that is to say, well, let's first of all store this. Let's get a stored copy. And we have two approaches I'm going to describe here. One is to work with layers, and the other one is just work not with layers. So first of all, we'll take this, and then we say, well, let's trim it down. Let's go to the threshold tool in the adjust filters. And with that, you can adjust to show only the white stuff or only the black stuff or somewhere in between. There's actually a little bit left up here at the top. And but what we can do is make it smaller, almost basically to seek out the center line or close enough. And so now when you fill it, you're still on the fill tool here, it's going to fill very crisp. Right, so then you need to bring back that original soft one here. Right, so before you lose this one, let's go store that. So you now have just the soft line and you have the crisp line with the filling. And in fact, you could do also a stored copy before filling it. Let's do that. So we have this, we have the filled one, and we want to bring this one back on top. Now, since the background color is white, if we multiply this image to this one, it's going to keep the white ones as is, or wherever the white ones are being multiplied, it's going to it's going to not modify the color. It's going to leave it as is, right? And if it's black, it's going to keep it black. It's going to turn it black. Well, perfect. So we can have the black on top of this. It's already black. And then it's going to have a transition into a gray color here and a grayish orange color on the inside, right? So all we got to do here is to find a way to combine this one. And sure enough, we have a combine option from this stored image. And there's one called multiply. And so now you have the transition. Now it might appear a little bit odd or sudden here because the blackness was so pronounced, and you might want to find an even more narrow threshold to make it a thin line. Right, but that put aside, it's one way to do it, and then of course you can go back to your usual painting. Make sure you select the black color, and you have some reason to smile. All right, so that's one approach. We didn't use layers. Now let's go the other approach. Let's put this image back in and go to the layers. That's on the sidebar. If you don't see the sidebar, it's probably hidden. You can bring it back with this little thing on the side. It might be on the left side, which it is by default. I like it on the right side. And you can add another layer. Then you can put in this layer that's currently selected. You can put in this crisp version, and in fact you could also just say, well, you know what, let's do that again. So let's undo the content of this one. Let's go on this layer, and this time we'll do a little bit more crispness on that threshold, even tighter, so it's a very thin line, right? But we do need it to be closed line. Make sure you verify that. If it's not clear, you want to verify that it is a crisp line. A closed line, a closed curve, so you can actually fill it. There is another threshold you could experiment with to see if you get better results. Down here, adaptive threshold. Let's go and see what that one would look like. Adjust adaptive threshold. So that might be equally interesting. Not so much in this case, still very wide lines. You can adjust here. These parameters might sometimes give you some extra controls. So, well, let's say we can live with this. It's not really supposed to be the most perfect scenario, but that's the image we're going to go now put into this layer. So make sure that first of all, let's make sure you store it, right? So there you go. So in this layer, down at the bottom, we'll put the original image. Then we go to this one and we put the thresholded image, right? Then we go back to this one and hide this layer. So now we should only see the one that's up here. Make sure you select this, and now you just, because we're now working on this layer, we can fill it, even though the background shows transparent because the base layer is gone. We can fill this. We can go and use the fill tool and spacebar to select the color. This time we'll go with some pink and fill it, right? And it's going to fill it in this area. And by the way, this is how you could also now make a custom brush where the background is transparent, or you can save this as a PNG with transparent background. If you key on the white background color, I mean, there's a variety of ways to get this to a graphic element if you need it that way. But more importantly, you can bring this one back here, the bottom layer. If you turn that back on, now you see them both together. Why? Because they're being multiplied by default, right? To multiply the default mode here for the layer blending from the upper to the next lower layer is controllable, except we don't have the opaque layer, but we do have about 30 or so different layers, and the one you want is the multiply mode. So, and that is here from this one. Select the blend layer, so you can see it actually can give you different results. Like if you do subtractive and you have back on the right edge here outside of the face, it's all white on both of these images. Well, subtract white from white, you're gonna get black, no surprise there. But there is a transition along the thick line there, or the outline, and you can see sometimes some other interesting side effects depending on how these pixels are operating and combined together. All right, so what we'll do, of course, is the multiply mode. That is the default, so you don't really have to do much. At this time, you can simply flatten it. That's this one here. Boop, and you get a single image, no more layers, and you can go back to drawing with the pen tool here and do your final eyes there on top. Alright, well that's it. Thanks for watching. I just wanted to share those two techniques.